Okay, on to the updates. Okay, so with this is kind of just there's a lot of different language updates, and I'm just including a couple of them this month. I think there's about 8 different language updates, but they're all linked from the same support article. So what you can do now, many of the Gemini features, is you can customize the language, the default language that you want to see, and of course the availability for a lot of the Gemini features as well. This first one is if you have access to Gemini Premium. That is the Gemini version with Take Notes for Me inside of Google Meet. So your Google Meet finishes and you get sent the notes from that meeting. You can customize the language for that. You can also set the default for recorded captions language and meeting transcripts as well. And you can actually set that up from a calendar invite. So now from a calendar invite, you can customize things such as hosts, breakout rooms, but also the language for Take Notes for Me, captions, and transcripts, and the default for recording as well. So all of those can now be preset. Okay, Classroom has received a couple of updates, and we've actually spoken to a few schools recently who are considering looking at dropping their paid LMS and moving back to Google Classroom. Classroom received a lot of updates recently around grading. And one in particular is that you can now grade all. You can essentially do bulk grading. So one of the use cases could be, of course, if you're using a grade entry for attendance, then you can actually do grade all for that field inside of either the assignment or indeed inside of the grade books inside of Classroom. So bulk grading is coming to Classroom.
Yeah, just something to add, James. I was in Oman and UAE this week, and a couple of schools I was meeting have moved to Classroom as their main learning management system, or if you're from the UK, VLE. Please post in the chat if you've moved or partially or fully to Classroom as your main kind of learning management system. Let us know in the chat. It's a trend we're seeing. I think as Workspace Education Plus gets more functionality in Classroom, obviously had class visits and things, and it's starting to be some ability to manage it centrally. I think it's becoming more common for schools to use it as a learning management system.
Thanks, Dan. Okay, so we talked about languages. Now on to programming languages. Inside of Google Docs, you can add code blocks. So if you want to format your coding inside of Google Docs, you can do that. And there's additional language support. They're all listed there, from HTML to CSS and so on and so on. So those are all of the languages which are now supported inside of code blocks in Google Docs. A quick update to Gemini inside of Google Classroom. There are several features for Gemini inside of Google Classroom, including lesson planning, idea generation, but now you can also generate questions or quizzes based upon a specific text. So if you upload a text, it will generate those questions or a quiz directly within Classroom. So you don't need to go away and put it into Gemini or move somewhere else. You can stick with inside of Classroom to do all of that. One of the many updates for Gemini models, and I wish anybody luck in trying to keep up to date with all the different models that are rolling out. The latest release is 2.5 Pro Experimental. If you go to Google Gemini, gemini.google.com, you will see there's a little arrow drop down at the top, and you can choose a model that you're working with. Now, Deep Research, which is a feature set within inside of Gemini, where you go to Gemini and it will research across the internet, whatever topic that you put in there. For example, could be researching student devices. You could put it into Deep Research to compare Chromebooks with MacBooks, for example. Well, now that is powered by Gemini's latest model, 2.5 Pro Experimental. And if you follow the chatbot arena, I think this comes at the top of those tables. But anyway, it's a very competitive model. A quick update to security. I won't go into this too much depth, but really just highlighting there's a number of different certifications that Gemini has achieved. ISO, SOC, and now the BSI C5 certifications as well. Those can all be linked from here. You can see all the certifications that Gemini has if you would like to dive deeper onto that. Okay, Google Vids. Google Vids is Google's collaborative video platform inside of Google Drive. If you have a Gemini license, you can use the generative capabilities to create content inside of Google Vids. So for the example we use often is if you have a school field and you want to share the field trip details with parents, you can take the document with all the details in, put it into Google Vids, and it will generate a video for that. Now, what it will also do is it will create a script for the video. So in addition to you adding information, you can automatically create the script using Gemini. And now it's extended that to being able to create the voiceover for the entire video. Rather than doing this scene by scene, it will now create the voiceover for the entire video. And you can adjust the tone of the voices for the entire video. There's a few different voices there as well. This really just made that experience of creating voiceovers much more intuitive and seamless. Another thing which is coming sometime soon, people always ask, will Google Vids generate like live action video? It was always no, it will not. But actually Google have announced that the Google's VO2 video generation model is coming to Google Vids in the future as well. I don't know when that is coming, but once it launches, you can then use a prompt inside of Vids to generate, I guess, live action video. If that's the right term. So if you wanted to do a drone flying over a school, for example, you could generate that video inside of Google Vids and put it onto your timeline. Really exciting. Okay, another, I guess, more of a minor update to Google Vids. You have the ability to set default fonts and colors for your videos. So for example, if you maybe you have a school branding that you want to run across the organization, you could set that in Google Vids as well, so your videos are going to adhere to those custom styles. I think we talked about this already. Gemini has a lot of integration across all of Google Drive. So again, just a quick reminder, the Gemini chat app is free, but all of the integration features are paid and you need a Gemini license for those. If you're inside of Google Calendar, you have access to Gemini, and it's really just, it's increased the number of supported languages. Now, understanding all of the supported languages are getting quite complex. So to see a latest list, I recommend, this is actually linked. So if you have access to this slide deck, you can click on the title, it will go through to that. But not just in Google Calendar, but across Google Docs. Help me write in Docs, help me write in Gmail. They've recently just started supporting Japanese and Korean as well. There's a long list of supported languages, and they're all slightly different depending on where you are inside of Gemini. But I recommend going to Google Support to check the latest list. In fact, I think I've got a link to that just in another slide in a moment. I'll show you. Google Classroom's read along. We were just talking about Google Classroom. Read along is, of course, where you can there's actually several things you can do now. You can use one of the books that is already present inside of read along. You can generate content, you can upload content, and the read along will listen to the student reading the book and check to see where they are and make corrections as needed. There's a new feature where silent reading mode allows students to just read the book. It's called silent reading mode. I think it just means students can just read the book within Classroom. And so that's launching as well. So you don't need to turn the microphone on. You don't need to have a busy classroom of students all reading out their books. They can silently read along. Okay, and I just mentioned this, of course. You can upload content to read along. That's just announcing this here as well. Rather than using the content that exists already in Classroom, you can upload your own content as well. So for example, you might use Gemini to generate a story. You can upload that directly to read along. Okay, this was it. Help me write in Gmail, available in Japanese and Korean. At the bottom just here, I put in the link to the complete list of languages supported as a whole host of apps. And let me just drop this in the chat. It's got the complete list of Gemini apps and then the languages which are supported as well. If you click on that, I'll just double check it. Yeah. that will show you the complete list of supported languages for Gemini. And I've dropped the link in the chat. Google Sheets tables have received a very useful update. You can now aggregate by group. So within tables, what tables do allow you to automatically format your data and aggregate, sort, and group your data. But now within individual groups, you can aggregate data as well. So if you created your groups, each of those groups can be aggregated as well. Just a usability update to Google Sheet. Google Workspace apps are now available for Gemini mobile app. What this means is when Gemini rolled out originally, these were called Workspace extensions. Basically, the ability for Gemini to access your data within Google Workspace. So you could go to Gemini and say, look at my data inside of Gmail, look at my data inside of Drive. Those were called extensions. They're now called apps, and they've just rolled out support to the mobile version of Gemini as well. Google Takeout has just received an update on options for exporting your data from Workspace. Now, this is an open beta. What open beta means is everybody has access to this, but this feature set is still in beta mode, as it were. So you can export data from Gmail, Chat, Drive, and so on. And you can also use labels and date ranges or selected shared drives. You can really granular control on what data is being exported with Takeout. That's in beta, so you should be able to see access to that. And we'll keep you updated on when that rolls out to, I guess, when it comes out of beta. Again, anything in beta, especially if you're exporting data, just be sure to check what happens when you're doing that, because it is still in beta. This was announced a couple of weeks ago, big Gemini and Notebook LM update. So I think this is one of the, this is obviously some of the fastest Google development that Google has ever done. Gemini didn't exist 2 years ago. Notebook LM is about 2.5 years old, and now they're core services. So Notebook LM began as a Workspace lab service, then it was a additional service, and now it is a core service. Gemini has moved from additional to core as well for everybody. That just basically guarantees full support from Google, and also the full terms of the standard terms of service from Google as well. Notebook LM has received a couple of updates to the way that sources are handled. You can now use the Discover Sources button inside of Notebook LM. So when you go to Notebook LM and you add sources, you can actually type in a query, and it will use the web search to locate possible sources matching your query. So for example, if you were researching, back to the student devices example, you could type that query into Notebook LM, it will locate sources, and you can choose to add those directly to Notebook LM. If you didn't have any sources to begin with, that's a great way to get started. Secondly, PDFs with images and charts, those images and charts will now be recognized as well. So previously, Notebook LM would only extract text from PDFs. Now it's going to use its multimodal capabilities to extract everything. Okay, so this is an admin update to the configuration of Gemini inside of the admin console. When Workspace apps are rolled out to general availability, so this is quite complex to understand. The Workspace apps, previously you had to enable them manually. Now they're going to be turned on by default. So if you did not want to provide access, you can go into the admin console and you can turn those off. You'll see a setting to turn those off. Otherwise, these will be enabled by default towards the end of this month, so in the next week or two. Okay, so those Workspace apps, formerly Workspace extensions, those are the tools that allow Gemini access to your Drive, Gmail, and so on data. Okay, so we just talked about Notebook LM. Notebook LM, of course, you can do the podcast style overview of your data sources or your notebook. That feature is now coming to Gemini as well in the Gemini app. So in Gemini app, if you add a source or a series of sources, you can use audio overview to give you an audio overview of those sources. Now, this is great. I've used this already. I was driving the other day, didn't obviously want to look at my phone, of course, even though I'm stuck in Bangkok traffic. I did have a couple of things I wanted to read, though, and I had them in Gemini, and I created the audio overview. It was incredibly quick, and you can get the audio overview directly inside of Gemini. Okay, Google Slides has had some updates, especially to design elements. And you can see in the animated GIF, just on the right-hand side there, there's sort of this little menu bar of things that you can drop into slides now. There is one for design elements, there's one for stock images as well, and image generation. So all of these things now are quickly available on the right-hand side. So rather than using the toolbar at the top of Google Slides, you got those quick access to all of those design elements on the right-hand side as well. I think we mentioned earlier about the different models. We talked about Gemini 2.5 Pro. Right now, the different models that you have available are 2.5 Pro Experimental, 2.5 Pro with Deep Research, 2.0 Flash, I think. I think that is it for now. There's a couple more coming as well. And then, of course, you can use, we talked about this last month, Canvas as well. We won't go too much into that. But then, again, Canvas is available in Gemini. Okay, and this very quick update. Again, the models are also available. The different models are available in the mobile app also. Okay, another Google Sheets update. You can now add multiple people chips into a Google Sheet cell. And you can see that the demonstration example they show here is actually a number of different email addresses and text interspersed across the cell. And then you can convert the email addresses to people chips, even though there's text in there as well. I think this is really cool. So if you're managing a project or you're commenting something up, very easy to add those people chips directly into the cell. Google Meet has had an update, and you might have seen this already because I've seen it rolling out. And especially the one you might see is the portrait view. So the dynamic layouts are changing. You can see in the image there, you got different sizes of the tiles, and you may see there's a new portrait view is coming as well. Some of these features are only coming to users with Google Meet hardware, but some of the dynamic layout and portrait view is coming to everybody. And so you might see in upcoming calls just a different sort of interface with it when you're looking at Google Meet. Oops, I won't. Stop. Okay, a quick Google Slides update, but a really important one if you're designing inside of Google Slides. You have multiple objects. Previously, when you selected them and tried to enlarge them, they would lose the proportional spacing and so on. That's all now managed. And so when you select multiple elements, they'll all be scaled by the same. If you're using Gemini across Google Workspace, you may have noticed a couple of things. One of them is the buttons inside of Google Drive. So when you go to Google Drive Home, you will see little Gemini buttons just at the top. And you can sort of, I know the image is quite small, but you can kind of just see them up here. So these are sort of like nudges into how you can use Gemini and suggested prompts as well. So again, just uncovering some of those features inside of Gemini within Drive. I think we talked about this already, but Help Me Create is had a couple of features. I think I've mentioned these maybe already. So in terms of the automatic generation of the voiceover, actually, I think I talked about this in the previous Google Vid one, but essentially it will generate the entire voiceover and match it up with your video all at one time, rather than you having to do that manually for each different scene. Okay, I think mentioned about the additional features around security and becoming a core service already. You may have seen, you've probably seen these already. Notebook LM now has mind map, so you can choose all of your sources or an individual source and generate a mind map that you can then export as a PNG, as an image file, and place into Google Slide or Google Doc, wherever else you want to do that. And you can also adjust the output language as well. So you can choose the output language for what you're generating with Notebook LM. The mind maps are really cool, definitely worth checking out. And that is it. Thank you from the minions. I have just got access to VO2, and I generated this morning. Then put it onto loop. I need to loop that. I don't need to do that now. So this is using VO2, Google's new video generation model. I have access to this through the Gemini chat app on my personal account, where I pay for Gemini. This will eventually be rolling out to education Gemini accounts as well, eventually. I've been playing around with it. It's actually quite amazing how good the video generation is just sat inside of Gemini. It's quite impressive. But anyway, I don't know when that is. Peter, do you know, have you seen when that's going to be coming to education accounts?
Yeah, I'm not sure, but just to say, it's also available in Google AI Studio as well, if you want to play that in there as well.
Yep.
But yeah, pretty cool.